The envelope sat on my kitchen table for 3 days before I opened it. Not because I didn't want to, because I knew. The way you know before a convoy hits an IED. The way you know when your CO calls you into his office at 0200. That feeling in your gut that says once you see what's inside, you can't unsee it. My name is Ryan Matthews, or at least, that's what I've been called for 28 years. I did 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2015, 2017, and 2019. 12 months each time in Helmand Province. I came home in one piece, married my high school girlfriend, got a job as a project manager for a construction firm outside Seattle. I was one of the lucky ones. The envelope came from my father's attorney 6 weeks after Dad passed. Heart attack in his sleep. Quick, clean, the way he would have wanted it. We buried him on a Tuesday with full military honors. He'd done 2 tours in Vietnam, came home, built a successful import-export business, raised me right, taught me about honor, duty, sacrifice. Everything I knew about being a man, I learned from Thomas Matthews. The attorney said there were some personal effects Dad wanted me to have, said I should look through them alone, take my time. Most of it was what you'd expect. His Vietnam medals, his watch, some old photos, but there was a manila envelope at the bottom of the box, sealed, my name written on it in his handwriting. I finally opened it on a Thursday night. Jessica was at her book club. I poured myself 2 fingers of the scotch Dad taught me to drink and slid my finger under the flap. The first thing I pulled out was a birth certificate. Not mine. I'd seen mine before. This one was different. The name read Rashid Ahmadi, born February 14, 1997, in Lashkar Gah, Helmand Province, Afghanistan. My birthday. My exact birthday. My hands started shaking before my brain caught up. There were photos. A young Afghan couple, maybe early 20s, standing outside a small house. The woman held a baby wrapped in a blue blanket. She was smiling, but her eyes looked tired. Scared, maybe. The man had his arm around her shoulders, protective. He looked like he was trying to be brave for the camera. I looked like him. Same nose, same jawline, same way of standing with weight shifted slightly to the left. There was a letter, Dad's handwriting, dated 2 weeks before he passed. Ryan, son, I know this will be the hardest thing you'll ever read. I've started this letter 100 times over the years and never had the courage to finish it. Now that I'm gone, you deserve the truth. He found me in 1998. He was in Afghanistan on business. His import company had contracts with the Northern Alliance, back when things were complicated in different ways. He was in Lashkar Gah meeting with a local contractor when he heard about a family that had been targeted by the Taliban. The father, Helmand Ahmadi, was an interpreter for American forces. Someone marked him. The Taliban doesn't forget interpreters. Hamid and Layla knew they were coming. They had maybe 48 hours. They couldn't run. The Taliban had eyes everywhere. So Hamid made a choice. He found the one American in town he thought he could trust, my father. Please, Dad wrote that Hamid said, you take him. You raise him American, safe. He cannot be Afghan anymore. If he stays, he is gone. Dad never had kids. Mom left him years before because he couldn't give her any. He saw this baby, saw me, and made a decision that changed 2 lives. He paid off the right people, got the right papers forged, flew me out of the country on his company's next cargo manifest. 6 months later, I was legally Ryan Matthews, adopted son of Thomas Matthews of Seattle, Washington. The letter continued. Your birth parents made me promise never to tell you. They said if you knew, you might try to find them. And if you tried to find them, you might end up gone too. I kept that promise for 27 years. I'm breaking it now because you deserve to know who you are, who you were, and because I need to tell you something else. I had to stop reading, put the letter down, walked to the window. Outside, Seattle was doing what Seattle does. Rain, gray sky, people walking dogs, cars passing. Normal. Everything normal. Except the fact that my entire life was a story someone made up. I wasn't Ryan Matthews from Seattle. I was Rashid Ahmadi from Helmand Province, Afghanistan, the same province where I'd spent 36 months of my life serving in the U.S. Marine Corps. The same roads I'd patrolled, the same villages I'd cleared, the same people I couldn't finish that thought. I went back to the letter. The second thing I need to tell you is harder. Your birth parents, Hamid and Layla, didn't make it. 6 months after I took you out, the Taliban found them. I found out through my contacts over there. I'm sorry, son. They saved your life, and they paid for it. I read that paragraph 4 times. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They were steady. Too steady. The way they get right before contact. But there's more. Of course there was more. Hamid had a brother, Rashid Ahmadi. He survived. And Ryan, Farid has been looking for you for 20 years. The letter explained it all. Farid had figured out what happened. Figured out his brother gave his nephew to an American rather than let the Taliban have him. Spent 2 decades tracking down which American. Found Dad's company. Found Dad's name. And about 4 years ago, found me. He knows you were deployed to Helmand. He knows which units you served with. He knows where you were stationed. Son, I think your deployment might not have been as random as you thought. The room tilted. I grabbed the rest of the papers from the envelope. Maps, personnel records, deployment orders, my deployment orders, highlighted sections, notes in Dad's handwriting. Requested assignment, Helmand Province. Approved. I never requested Helmand specifically. I remembered filling out my dream sheet before my first deployment. I'd put down Germany, Okinawa, California. The court doesn't usually care what you want, but still, I never asked for Afghanistan. But someone had. Someone with access to personnel files, someone who could make requests look official. There was an email printout, dated 3 months before my first deployment, from an email address I didn't recognize to my father's business account. Mr. Matthews, your nephew will be assigned to FOB Leatherneck, 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines, Helmand Province. I will be waiting for him. We have much to discuss about his family, about his real family. F.A. Before I tell you what I did next, if you're hooked on this story, hit that like button and subscribe. There are dozens more voices like mine here. And drop a comment with your country. I'm curious where all of you were listening from. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Jessica came home around 2200, found me at the kitchen table with papers spread everywhere, empty scotch glass, staring at a photo of 2 people I'd never met but apparently shared DNA with. Babe, you okay? I wasn't okay, but I didn't know how to explain it, so I told her I was dealing with some of Dad's business stuff, legal complications. She kissed the top of my head, said we'd figure it out tomorrow, and went to bed. I sat there until 04:30, piecing it together. Farid had orchestrated my deployment, somehow. Had to have connections, military connections, government connections, something. You don't just manipulate Marine Corps personnel assignments from a village in Afghanistan unless you've got reach, unless you've got resources. The question was why? What did he want? Revenge for his brother? To meet me? To what? Bring me home? I pulled up my deployment records on my laptop, started cross-referencing with the notes Dad had made, locations where my unit operated, villages we visited, missions we ran. And then I saw it. We'd been to Lashkar Gah, November 2015, 3 months into my first tour. Routine patrol, meeting with local tribal leaders, building relationships. I remembered it because it was one of the few missions where we didn't take contact. Everyone was friendly, almost too friendly. There was one elder who spoke perfect English, better than most of the interpreters we worked with. He'd insisted on speaking with me specifically, asked where I was from, how long I'd been in country, whether I liked Afghanistan. I thought he was just being polite, making conversation. I pulled out the photos from the envelope again, looked at the man standing next to my birth mother. Then I pulled up the photos from that patrol on my old external hard drive. We'd taken pictures with the locals, Hearts and minds stuff for the command to show we were making progress. There he was, older, grayer, but the same eyes, the same way of standing. Rashid Ahmadi had met me, talked to me, stood 3 feet away while I had no idea who he was, and I'd shaken his hand, thanked him for his hospitality, and walked away. The realization hit like a flashbang. He knew who I was. I didn't know who I was. I needed to talk to someone who might understand this, someone who'd been there. I called Martinez, my team leader from all 3 tours. We'd stayed close after we got out. He was working as a contractor now, still had connections. "Martinez, so 5 o'clock. This better be good. I need you to look into something for me, quietly." "What kind of something?" "Personnel records, my deployment orders, who authorized my assignment to Helmand." There was a pause. "Why?" "I can't explain yet. Can you do it?" Another pause. "Yeah, give me 48 hours. Martinez called back in 36. "You need to come over. Not talking about this on the phone." He lived in Tacoma, 40 minutes south. I told Jessica I was meeting an old Marine buddy for breakfast. Not technically a lie. Martinez's apartment still looked like a deployment barracks. Minimal furniture, nothing on the walls, everything squared away. He had coffee waiting. His face was serious. "Sit down." I sat. "Your orders are weird, man. Like, really weird." "Weird how?" "The request for Helmand came through channels, but it was buried in a batch processing order. Thousands of assignments being cut at once. Yours was flagged as regional expertise preferred, with a notation that you'd scored high on cultural awareness testing." "I never took cultural awareness testing." "I know. I checked. The test results in your file are fabricated. Good fabrications. Whoever did it knew the system, but fake." My coffee was getting cold. I wasn't drinking it. "There's more," Martinez continued. "I asked around, quiet-like. Talked to a guy who works personnel at HQMC. He said there were 3 other Marines whose orders got manipulated the same way during that cycle. All of them deployed to Helmand, all of them between 2015 and 2017. "What happened to them?" Martinez's jaw tightened. 2 came home fine. 1 didn't make it back." "And?" "The one who didn't make it, his family started asking questions about his deployment, why he got sent to Helmand specifically. They were making noise. Then they stopped." "Why'd they stop?" "They got paid. Settlement from some charity organization. $500,000. Charity was called the Afghan American Reconciliation Fund." I felt cold. "You find out who runs it?" "It's a shell. Runs through 3 different countries, but the money comes from somewhere in the Gulf. And here's the thing that'll twist your brain. One of the board members is listed as F. Ahmadi, Cultural Liaison." Now here's where everything changed. But real quick, if you're invested in how this ends, I'd genuinely appreciate a subscription. More soldier stories drop daily. Comment your country below. Always amazes me how far these reach. Fareed wasn't just looking for me. He was running an operation, a sophisticated one. And somehow, my deployment, my entire military career, had been part of it. "What do you want to do?" Martinez asked. "I need to find him. Talk to him." "You sure that's smart? This guy has serious reach. He manipulated the Marine Corps. He's got money, he's got connections. He's my uncle." Martinez looked at me like I'd grown a second head, so I told him everything. The envelope, the photos, the birth certificate, all of it. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. "So you're Afghan?" "Apparently." "And you spent 3 years fighting in your own country without knowing it?" "Yeah." "That's... Jesus, Matthews, that's heavy." We sat there drinking terrible coffee while the morning light came through his blinds. "I can get you a contact. Guy I worked with does security contracting in Kabul. He knows people. Can ask around about Rashid Ahmadi without raising flags." "Do it." 3 days later, Martinez called. "My guy knows him. Says Rashid Ahmadi is a big deal in Helmand. Runs a construction company, has government contracts, rebuilt half of Lashkar Gah after we pulled out. Also runs that charity I told you about. Clean reputation, well-connected. Afghan government loves him, Americans love him. Model citizen." How does someone like that manipulate military deployments? Money, lots of it, and friends in the right places. My guy says Fareed has been very vocal about bringing back Afghans who were taken out during the conflict years, calls it reunification, says families deserve to be whole. Did he say anything about me specifically? Asked if he knew a Ryan Matthews, Marine veteran. I played dumb. He said if I ever ran into you, Fareed would like to speak to you. Offered 10 grand just for making the introduction. My hands were shaking again. What'd you say? I said I'd keep an ear out, then I hung up and called you. That night, I told Jessica everything, showed her all the papers, the photos, the letters. She held me while I cried for the first time since Dad passed, maybe the first time since I got back from my last deployment. What are you going to do? Jessica asked. I don't know. Do you want to meet him, your uncle? I think I already did. I just didn't know it. She was quiet for a while. Then, your dad, Thomas, he saved your life. He raised you. He loved you. I know. But these people, they're your blood, your history. I know that too. There's no wrong answer here. But there was. That was the problem. Every choice felt wrong. If I ignored this, pretended I never opened the envelope, went on being Ryan Matthews from Seattle, I'd spend the rest of my life wondering about the family that gave me up to save me, about the uncle who'd spent 20 years trying to find me. But if I reached out to Fareed, if I opened that door, what would it cost me? What would he want from me? And what would it mean for Jessica, for the life I'd built? I spent 2 weeks turning it over, going to work, coming home, acting normal. But inside, I was in pieces. Then I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. No subject line. Rashid, I know Thomas has passed. I am sorry for your loss. He was a good man who did a hard thing to save you. I do not blame him for taking you, but you are a grown man now. You deserve to know your family. You deserve to know your story. If you wish to speak, I will come to you. No pressure, no expectations, just family. Your uncle Fareed. He'd been watching, waiting for Dad to pass, waiting for me to find out. I stared at that email for an hour. Then I replied, Seattle, next month, public place, just you. His response came back in 10 minutes. Thank you, nephew. I will be there. We met at a coffee shop in Capitol Hill, neutral ground, public. Jessica wanted to come, but I needed to do this alone. Fareed looked different than he had in 2015. Older, obviously, better dressed. He wore an expensive suit, gold watch, carried himself like a man who'd spent time in boardrooms, but when he smiled, I saw my birth father's face in the photo. Rashid. He stood when I approached. It's Ryan. Of course, Ryan. He gestured to a chair. Please. We sat. He ordered tea, I ordered coffee. For a few minutes, neither of us spoke. You look like Hamid, he finally said. Your father, my brother, same eyes. I don't remember him. You were only a baby when he made the choice to save you. It was the right choice, the only choice. Your email said you wanted to tell me my story. He nodded. Your story, our story, what happened after Thomas took you. So he told me. Hamid and Layla had stayed in Lashkar Gah for 6 more months after I left. Tried to be careful, but the Taliban found out Hamid had worked with Americans. They came at night, took them both. What happened next? Fareed's voice caught. He didn't give details. I didn't ask. I was in Kabul when it happened. Heard about it 3 days later. By the time I got back, they were already gone, buried in a cemetery outside town. No markers, no names. I'm sorry. Do not be sorry. You were the reason they endured it. They saved you. That mattered to them. He explained what happened after, how he'd tracked down Thomas through his business contacts, how he'd learned about the adoption, how he'd spent years saving money, building connections, getting into positions of influence. I needed to find you, to tell you who you were, to bring you home if you wanted. So you manipulated my deployment. He didn't deny it. I had resources by then, friends in your military bureaucracy. It was not hard to request you be assigned somewhere specific. I wanted to meet you, see the man my nephew had become. You could have just told me that day we met. Could I? You were a Marine, on patrol in a combat zone. If I had said, "Excuse me, Corporal, but you are actually Afghan and I am your uncle," what would you have done? He had a point. I waited, watched, saw that you were a good man, a brave man, like your father. Then I waited for the right time. My dad passing, that was the right time? Thomas loved you. He would not have wanted me to tell you while he lived. It would have hurt him. I respected that. But now, he spread his hands, now you know. And you must decide what to do with this knowledge. I need to tell you what happened next, but first, if this story's got you, show some love with a like and subscribe. I read every comment, especially love seeing where you're all from around the world. What do you want from me? I asked. I want you to know your family, your history, your real name. He pulled out a folder, more photos, documents, a family tree going back generations. I want you to know where you come from, the blood in your veins, the people who gave everything so you could live. I looked through the papers. My birth mother's family, teachers, merchants, farmers, good people. My birth father's family, soldiers mostly, men who fought against the Soviets, then fought against the warlords, then tried to survive the Taliban. There are cousins, aunts, uncles, people who would like to meet you if you are willing. In Afghanistan? Some, yes. Others have scattered. Dubai, London, Toronto. We are everywhere now. And if I say no, if I want to just stay Ryan Matthews? His face fell, but he nodded. Then you stay Ryan Matthews. I will not force anything. This is your choice. It has always been your choice. We talked for 3 hours. He told me about Hamid, what kind of man he was, how he met Layla, how excited they were when I was born, how terrified they were when the Taliban started asking questions. He told me about growing up in Helmand, about the compound where our family lived, about the pomegranate trees in the courtyard that Hamid had planted the year I was born. They are still there, he said. I made sure of that, kept the property, rebuilt the house after it was destroyed. It sits empty now, waiting. Waiting for what? For family to come home. When we parted, he gave me his personal number, said to call if I wanted to talk more. No pressure, no timeline, just an open door. I went home and sat with Jessica in our living room. Our home, our life, our normal, and told her everything. What do you want to do? She asked. I have no idea. Do you feel Afghan? I don't know what that means. Do you feel American? I've been American my whole life, but knowing it's not real, that changes things. It's as real as you make it, Ryan. You served this country. You bled for it. That's real. She was right. But she was also wrong. Because part of me, a part I'd never known existed until 2 weeks ago, was from somewhere else, from people I'd never met, from a father who'd given me up so I could live. Over the next few months, Fareed and I talked regularly. Emails at first, then phone calls. He sent more photos, more stories, told me about the family, about Afghan culture, about who I might have been if things had gone differently. And slowly, a plan formed. He invited me to Kabul, said there was family there who wanted to meet me, said he'd arranged everything, security, accommodations, translators, everything. Just a week, just to meet people, to see where I came from. Jessica didn't love the idea. Afghanistan isn't exactly stable right now. It's never been stable, but Fareed has connections. He can keep me safe. Can he, though? Or is this all part of something bigger? What do you mean? Ryan, think about it. This man manipulated your entire military career, got you deployed to Afghanistan 3 times, paid off families of Marines, built this elaborate network just to find you. Don't you think that's extreme? He's family. He's a stranger who shares your DNA. That's not the same thing. But I'd already made up my mind. I flew to Kabul in August. Fareed met me at the airport with a security detail. 3 armed men in civilian clothes who watched everything like they'd done this before. The city was chaos, traffic, noise, dust, heat, but Farid moved through it like he owned it. He'd arranged for me to stay at a compound in a nice part of the city. High walls, armed guards, generators for when the power went out. Safe, he promised. The family started arriving that evening. Cousins I didn't know I had, an aunt who'd been 9 when Hamid passed, an uncle who'd fought with the Mujahideen and lost an arm in the process. All of them wanting to meet Rashid, to see Hamid's son. They spoke Pashto and Dari. I spoke English. We communicated through gestures and awkward smiles. But there was warmth, real warmth. These people cared about me because of who my father had been, because I was blood. One of my cousins, Nasir, spoke decent English. He was about my age, worked as an engineer in Kabul. We ended up talking for hours that first night. Your father was a good man, very brave. He knew what would happen if he stayed, but he stayed anyway. For your mother, for you. Farid said the Taliban took them both. Nasir's face darkened. Yes, it was very bad. We do not speak of the details, but you should know they did not break, even at the end. They protected you. How? The Taliban wanted to know where the baby went, where the American took you. They tried to make your parents talk, but they never did. They went to their deaths protecting you. That hit different than anything Farid had told me. My birth parents hadn't just given me up, they'd been tortured for it, and they still hadn't talked. On the 3rd day, Farid took me to Lashkargah. Flying into Helmand Province as a civilian felt surreal. I'd spent 3 years here in uniform, carrying a rifle, watching for threats. Now I was in slacks and a button-down, riding in an SUV with tinted windows. The city had changed. New construction everywhere, roads that actually had pavement, markets that looked almost prosperous. And in the middle of it all, the compound. My family's compound. Farid had rebuilt it exactly as it had been, or close to it. Whitewashed walls, blue door, courtyard with the pomegranate trees, taller now, bearing fruit. There was a small fountain that hadn't been there before. Everything else looked like it stepped out of the old photos. This is your home, whenever you want it. We went inside. The rooms were furnished, but empty, waiting. There was a nursery the Farid said was mine, a bedroom that had been my parents'. Everything preserved, everything ready. Why? I asked. Because family should have a place to return to. That night we had dinner in the courtyard under the pomegranate trees, lamb and rice and flatbread. The same food my father would have eaten, the same stars he would have looked at. And Farid told me the rest. There is something you should know about your deployment, about why I arranged it. Here it comes, I thought. I did not just want to meet you. I wanted to see if you would come back. Come back? To Afghanistan, to your family, to your people. He leaned forward. Ryan, Rashid, you are Afghan by blood, but you are American by choice and by raising. I needed to know which one would be stronger. This was a test? An observation. I watched you during your deployments, watched how you treated locals, how you spoke to interpreters, how you carried yourself in our country. And I saw that Thomas raised you well, raised you with honor. But I also saw that you did not belong here, not as a soldier. Then why bring me back now? Because now you are not a soldier. Now you are just a man who can choose his own path. He explained his vision, the charity, the reunification project, bringing back Afghans who'd been scattered by decades of war, giving them resources, opportunities, a chance to rebuild. I want you to be part of it, he said. Use your experience, your connections in America. Help me bring families back together the way I brought you home. I'm not home. This isn't my home. Isn't it? This compound, these trees, this earth, it is in your blood. Blood isn't everything. No, but it is something, and you feel it. I can see it in your eyes. You belong here as much as you belong in Seattle. He wasn't wrong. There was something about being in this place, about sitting under these trees, about knowing my father had planted them, that my mother had walked these paths, that I was born here. But there was also Jessica and Martinez, and the life I'd built, the country I'd served. "I need time to think about this," I said. "Of course, take all the time you need." But the next morning, everything changed. I woke up to voices outside my room, loud voices, argument. I dressed quickly and found Farid in the courtyard with 3 men I didn't recognize. They were dressed in traditional clothes, armed with AKs, and they weren't happy. When they saw me, they stopped, stared. One of them said something in Pashto. Farid responded sharply. The man argued back. "What's going on?" I asked. Farid's face was tight. "Go back to your room." "What's happening?" "These men, they are from the local Taliban council. They heard an American was here. They want to speak with you." My blood went cold. Taliban? Former Taliban. They are part of the government now. After your country left, they took over again. It is complicated. One of the men stepped forward. He was older, maybe 50, with a gray beard and hard eyes. He spoke in broken English. "You are Rashid Ahmadi's son? The one who was taken?" I looked at Farid. He nodded slightly. "Yes," I said. The man's face twisted. "Your father was a traitor. He worked with Americans. He gave you to them, made you one of them. He saved my life. He betrayed his people. And you," he looked me up and down, "you came back as a soldier, fought against us, against your own people." "I didn't know." "You know now." He turned to Farid, said something sharp in Pashto. Farid responded, placating, explaining. The men argued back. Finally, Farid turned to me. "We need to go, now." "What did they say?" "They said your presence here is an insult, that bringing you back was a mistake, that you should never have been born Afghan if you were going to become American." "Farid!" "We need to go, now." We left within the hour. Farid's security detail got us to the airport, got me on the first flight to Kabul, then Kabul to Dubai, then Dubai to Seattle. I didn't see Farid again before I left. He stayed in Lashkar to deal with the fallout. When I got home, Jessica was waiting at the airport. She took one look at my face and knew. It didn't go well? It went exactly as it was going to go. We drove home in silence, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. But 3 days later, I got an email from Nasir, my cousin in Kabul. "Ryan, I do not know if Uncle Farid will tell you this, but you should know. The men who came to the compound, they weren't just angry about you being there. They were angry because Farid has been using his charity to bring back others like you, Afghans who were raised in the West. He has been trying to rebuild a generation. But the Taliban sees it as infiltration. They have shut down his charity, frozen his accounts. Some of his people have been arrested. Farid is under investigation now. They say he was working with Western intelligence, that his reunification project was a cover for espionage. It is not true, but truth does not matter here anymore. I'm sorry. I know this is not what you wanted to hear, but you should know what your visit cost him." I read that email 5 times. Then I called Farid's number. No answer. Texted. Nothing. Tried his business line. Disconnected. I reached out to Martinez's contractor friend, asked him to check on Rashid Ahmadi in Kabul. He called back 2 days later. "Your guy's gone, man. Like, gone. His office is empty, his compound is occupied by Taliban security. Word on the street is he fled to Dubai before they could arrest him. Smart move." "Is he okay?" "No idea, but he's not in Afghanistan anymore. That's all I can tell you." I tried to reach him for weeks. Nothing. Then 6 months later, I got a letter. Actual physical letter. Postmarked from London. "Rashid? Ryan, I am sorry I have not been in touch. Things became complicated after your visit. Not your fault. This was always going to happen eventually. I pushed too hard, too fast. Tried to bring back too many people before the country was ready to receive them. I am in London now, safe, rebuilding. Some of the family made it out with me. Others are scattered. Such is our way. I want you to know that I do not regret bringing you home, even briefly, even though it cost me everything I built. You deserved to know your family, to see where you came from, and I got to meet my brother's son. That was worth any price. You do not have to choose between being American and being Afghan. You are both. You will always be both. But I understand now that being both means sometimes belonging fully to neither. Thomas Matthews raised a good man. Helmand Ahmadi would have been proud. I am proud. Take care of yourself, nephew, and know that you have family everywhere. Even if we never meet again, you are not alone in this world. Your Uncle Farid. I folded the letter and put it in the same envelope with the adoption papers, with the photos of parents I never knew, with the birth certificate that said I was someone I'd never been. Jessica found me that night sitting in our home office, staring at all of it spread across the desk. "You okay?" she asked. Farid lost everything trying to bring me home. His business, his charity, his place in Afghanistan. Everything. She sat next to me, took my hand. "Did he tell you that to make you feel guilty?" "No. He said it was worth it." "Do you believe him?" I thought about that. About the compound under the pomegranate trees, about meeting cousins I didn't know I had, about standing in the place where I was born, where my father had made the choice to give me away. Yeah, I think I do. So what now? That was the question, wasn't it? What now? I couldn't go back to Afghanistan. That door was closed, maybe forever. The Taliban had made it clear I was American to them. A traitor's son who'd fought against them in their own country. There would be no welcome there. But I also couldn't pretend I didn't know. Couldn't go back to being just Ryan Matthews from Seattle like none of this had happened. Because it had happened. And it changed everything about who I was. "I don't know," I said finally. "But I think I need to do something with it. With this story." Over the next few months, I started researching. Found out there were hundreds, maybe thousands of kids like me. Afghans, Iraqis, Syrians, adopted or evacuated during conflicts. Raised in the West with no connection to their birth culture. Some knew their origins. Most didn't. I connected with a few of them, started a small support group online. Just people who understood what it meant to be caught between two worlds, to have blood that said one thing and a life that said another. One guy, Kareem, had been adopted from Iraq in 2003. Raised in Texas, joined the army and did 2 tours in his birth country without knowing. When he found out, it broke him for a while. But he'd found his way through it. You can't change where you came from, and you can't change what you became. All you can do is figure out how to carry both. That became my answer. When people asked if I was American or Afghan, I stopped trying to choose. I was both. I would always be both. And that was okay. I kept the name Ryan Matthews. It was the name I'd lived with for 28 years, the name I'd deployed under, the name I'd married under. But I also started learning Pashto, started reading about Afghan history, about the country I'd fought in without knowing it was mine. Jessica supported all of it, even when it was hard. Even when I woke up at 0300 with nightmares about patrolling roads that my father might have walked, about clearing villages where my cousins might have lived, about all the what-ifs that I could never know the answers to. "You didn't know," she'd say, holding me in the dark. You can't blame yourself for what you didn't know. But I did know now, and that was its own kind of weight. Martinez came over one night about a year after I got back from Kabul. We sat on my back deck drinking beer, watching the sun go down over Seattle. "You ever regret it? Finding out?" "Every day." "Yeah?" "Yeah. But I also can't imagine not knowing. You know what I mean?"
He nodded slowly. "It's like getting wounded. You wish it never happened, but once it does, it becomes part of who you are. You can't unlearn it." "That's exactly what it's like." We were quiet for a while. Then he said, "I looked into those other Marines, the ones whose orders got manipulated like yours. And one of them found out about his birth family, made contact, flew to Afghanistan to meet them. What happened? He didn't come back to his wife, filed for divorce from Kabul, lives there now, converted to Islam, whole 9 yards. My chest tightened. Jesus! The other one, he found out too, but he went the opposite way, refused to acknowledge it, told his family to never speak about it, pretends he never learned the truth. Which one do you think is right? Martinez shrugged. Neither. Both. That's not for me to say. But I'll tell you what I think about you. What? I think you found the middle path. You're not pretending it didn't happen, but you're not abandoning everything you built either. That takes guts. Doesn't feel like guts. Feels like I'm failing at both. That's how you know you're doing it right. If it was easy, it wouldn't be real. 3 months after that conversation, I got another email from Farid. He was settled in London now, working with refugee organizations, helping displaced Afghans find their footing in the UK. He asked if I wanted to visit. No pressure, just an offer. I talked to Jessica about it. "Do you want to go?" she asked. "Part of me does. And the other part? Is scared of what happens if I keep pulling on this thread. Where does it end? Maybe it doesn't end. Maybe this is just your life now, complicated and messy and beautiful because of it." I flew to London in November, met Farid at a small Afghan restaurant in East London. He looked older, tired, but when he saw me, his face lit up. "Rashid, Ryan, you came." I did. We hugged, and this time it felt different. Not like strangers trying to find connection, but like family who'd been through something hard together and survived it. He told me about his work, about the families he was helping, about building a new kind of life in London, about staying connected to Afghanistan even though he couldn't go back. "Do you regret it? Everything you lost?" "Every day," he said, echoing what I'd told Martinez. "But I also gained something I thought I would never have. I met my nephew. I gave you back a piece of your history. That matters." "It cost you everything." "Not everything. I still have family. I still have purpose. I am still here. That is not nothing." We spent 3 days together. He introduced me to other relatives who'd made it to London, more cousins, an aunt, people who remembered Hamid, who told me stories about him that Farid hadn't known. One of my aunts, Mariam, pulled out old photos I'd never seen. My father as a young man, my mother on their wedding day, the compound before the war when it had been full of life. "You have his smile," she said, touching my face. "Hamid's smile. I thought I would never see it again." On my last day in London, Farid and I walked through Hyde Park. It was cold, gray, very un-Afghan and very non-Seattle, neutral ground in every way. "I want to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." "Okay. Do you wish I had never found you, that you had lived your whole life as Ryan Matthews, never knowing about Rashid Ahmadi?" I thought about that question for a long time, watched the ducks on the Serpentine, watched families walking past, normal people living normal lives without this weight. "Sometimes," I said, "when I wake up at 300 thinking about all the things I can't change, about my birth parents dying to protect me, about you losing everything trying to bring me home, about all the ways this story could have gone differently. In those moments, yeah, I wish I didn't know. And the rest of the time? The rest of the time, I'm glad I know who I am, all of who I am, even though it's complicated, even though it hurts." He nodded. "That is a good answer." "What about you? Do you regret finding me?" "Never, not for 1 second. Finding you meant keeping a promise to my brother, meant his sacrifice wasn't forgotten, meant his son knew where he came from. That is worth any price." We walked in silence for a while longer. "There is one more thing," Farid said, "something I have been waiting to give you." He pulled a small box from his coat, handed it to me. Inside was a ring, simple gold band with an inscription in Pashto. What does it say? For my son, with love. Hamid had it made when you were born. He was going to give it to you when you became a man, but... He trailed off. I held the ring, felt the weight of it, the history. I have carried it for 26 years, waiting for the right time to give you. I think now is the time. I put the ring on. It fit perfectly. Thank you, I said, for everything, for finding me, for not giving up, for keeping his memory alive. You are family, Farid said, simply. That is what family does.
I flew home the next day. Jessica picked me up at the airport, noticed the ring immediately. From your father? She asked. From both of them. Thomas raised me. Hamid gave me the chance to be raised. She kissed me. I'm proud of you, for doing the hard thing, for showing up. That night, I took out all the papers, the adoption documents, the photos, the letters, everything that told the story of Rashid Ahmadi becoming Ryan Matthews. And I added one more thing, a letter I'd written on the plane home, not to Farid, not to Jessica, but to myself, to Rashid, to the person I might have been if things had gone differently. You would have been raised in Lashkar Gah, under the pomegranate trees, with family all around. You would have spoken Pashto and Dari, would have learned the Quran, would have known your father's laugh and your mother's cooking. But you also might not have survived. The Taliban might have found you. The war might have taken you. The 1,000 things that could have gone wrong might have gone wrong. Instead, you became me, Ryan Matthews, American, Marine, husband, someone caught between two worlds but belonging somehow to both. I don't know if this is better or worse than the life you would have lived, but it's the life we got, and I'm going to honor both sides of it. The Afghan blood that runs through our veins, the American values that shaped our character. We are both. We will always be both, and that's okay. I sealed the letter and put it with everything else. My history, my story, the truth about who I was and how I came to be. Now, before I finish this story, if you've made it this far, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Where are you listening from? What part of this story hit you hardest? I read every single one. 6 months later, I got a call from Martinez. You sitting down? He asked. Why? Because I found something. About your deployment. About why Farid really brought you back. My stomach dropped. What do you mean, really? Remember I told you about that Marine who didn't make it back? The one whose family got paid off? Yeah. I did more digging. His name was Kyle Richardson, KIA in Helmand, 2016. Families started asking questions about why he got deployed there specifically. Then they got a payout and went quiet. You told me this already. What I didn't tell you, because I just found out, is that Richardson wasn't adopted. He was born Kyle Richardson in Michigan, raised by his biological parents. No Afghan connection at all. The room tilted. Then why? Farid didn't just manipulate deployments for adopted Afghans, Matthews. He manipulated deployments for any Marine who fit his criteria. Young, skilled, good with locals. He was recruiting. Recruiting for what? I don't know. But 3 of the Marines whose orders he manipulated, they all ended up working for his security company after they got out. Not officially, it's buried in subsidiary contracts, but they're all there. All of them in Afghanistan. All of them working for Farid. My hands were shaking. He recruited me. Did he? I thought back to Kabul, to Lashkar Gah, to all the conversations about reunification and charity work and using my connections. He wanted me to work for his organization, use my American military experience, help bring people back. Matthews, what if the reunification project was cover for something else? Like what? Like a private military company, like intelligence work,
like using Western-raised Afghans to run operations that needed people who could pass in both worlds. That's insane. Is it? Think about it. He had resources to manipulate Marine Corps personnel records, money to pay off families, connections throughout the Afghan government and the international community. That's not charity work, man. That's intelligence infrastructure. I couldn't speak. I'm not saying he's a bad guy, Martinez continued. Maybe he really believed in reunification. Maybe it started that way and evolved. But you need to ask yourself, why did he really want you back? Was it just about family? Or was it about what you could do for him? I hung up, sat there staring at the ring on my finger, the ring Hamid had made for his son, the ring Farid had carried for 26 years. Was any of it real? Or was I just another recruit he'd manipulated into position? I called Farid's number. He answered on the third ring. Ryan, good to hear from you. Did you recruit Kyle Richardson, the Marine who didn't make it back? Silence. Farid, did you? It is complicated. Then uncomplicated. He sighed. Yes, I recruited several Marines whose deployments I arranged. Not all, but some. Young men who could help with the work I was doing. Work that got Richardson taken out? That was an accident, a patrol that went wrong. It had nothing to do with, you paid off his family so they'd stop asking questions. I helped them. They were struggling. Their son was gone. I gave them resources to cover up what you were really doing.
Another silence. Why? I asked. Why go through all of this? The manipulation, the recruiting, bringing me to Afghanistan? Why? Because someone had to do something, Farid said quietly. Someone had to try to fix what was broken. Afghanistan was falling apart. The Americans were leaving. The Taliban was coming back. I needed resources. I needed people I could trust, people who understood both worlds. So, you used me? No, you were different. You were family. Everything I told you was true. About Hamid, about Layla, about waiting 20 years to find you. That was real. But you also wanted me to work for you. I wanted you to help rebuild your country. Is that so wrong? It's not my country, Farid. I'm American. I've been American my whole life. Just because I was born there doesn't make it mine. Your parents gave everything. Don't. My voice came out harder than I meant it to. Don't use them to manipulate me. They saved me so I could live, not so I could come back and fight in your private war. It is not a war. It is... I don't care what you call it. I'm done. I hung up. Jessica found me an hour later, still sitting in the same spot. What happened? I told her everything. About Martinez's call, about Richardson, about Farid's recruitment operation disguised as charity work. Do you think he ever really cared? About me as family? Or was I always just another asset? Jessica sat next to me, took both my hands. I think people can be complicated. I think he probably did care about you as family, and also saw you as useful. Both things can be true. That doesn't make it better. No, but it makes it human. She was right, but I didn't want her to be right. I wanted it to be simple, wanted Farid to be either a loving uncle who'd sacrificed everything for family, or a manipulative operator who'd used family as leverage. Both. But real people are never that simple. I took off the ring, put it back in its box, put the box with all the other papers and photos and letters that told my complicated, messy, impossible story. And I made a decision. I wasn't going to work for Farid, wasn't going to let myself be recruited into whatever organization he was building, but I also wasn't going to pretend none of it happened, wasn't going to deny the Afghan part of my identity just because it came with complications. I was Ryan Matthews, born Rashid Ahmadi, American by raising, Afghan by blood, Marine veteran,
husband. Someone who'd spent 3 years fighting in his birth country without knowing it. Someone whose deployment had been manipulated by his uncle for reasons both genuine and strategic. All of it was true. None of it was simple. Over the next year, I cut off contact with Farid, stopped responding to his emails, blocked his number. I needed distance from whatever he was running, whatever role he'd wanted me to play. But I kept in touch with the cousins I'd met in London, with Nasir in Kabul, with Mariam, the family who'd welcomed me without asking for anything in return. And I kept learning Pashto, kept reading about Afghan history, kept wearing the ring sometimes when I needed to remember where I came from. The support group I'd started grew. More people found it. More stories of displaced kids trying to figure out who they were. We helped each other navigate the questions that didn't have easy answers. Martinez kept me updated on what he learned about Farid's operation. Turned out, it was bigger than we thought. Not just recruiting former Marines, but running actual security contracts throughout Central Asia. Some of it legitimate, some of it less clear. You dodged a bullet, getting out when you did. Maybe. Or maybe I just chose one complicated path over another. Last month, I got a letter, physical mail again, from London. It was from Farid. Ryan, I know you do not wish to speak with me. I understand. I crossed lines I should not have crossed, used family connections for purposes that went beyond family. For that, I am sorry. But I want you to know that everything I told you about Hamid and Layla was true. They were heroes. They saved you because they loved you. That was never a manipulation. That was never strategy. That was family. I failed to keep the promise I made to my brother, to protect you without asking anything in return. I let my other work cloud that. For that, I am deeply sorry. The ring is yours. It always was. Hamid made it for his son. You are his son. Whatever you choose to do with your life, wherever you choose to belong, that ring means you were loved, that your parents gave everything so you could live. Do not let my mistakes take that from you. Your Uncle Farid. I read the letter 3 times, then put it with all the others. Jessica asked if I was going to respond. I don't know yet. What would you say if you did?
I thought about that, about everything that had happened, about being adopted from a war zone, about being deployed back to my birth country 3 times without knowing, about an uncle who'd spent 20 years finding me for reasons both pure and practical, about parents who'd been tortured rather than reveal where I'd gone. I'd say, thank you for showing me where I came from, even if the path there was crooked. And I'm sorry it cost you everything. And I hope someday I can separate the uncle who loved his brother's son from the operator who saw a useful recruit. But I'm not there yet. Are you going to send that? Probably not, but at least I know what I'd say. That night, I had the dream again. The one I'd been having since I found out. I'm walking through Lashkar Gah in my Marine uniform, but everyone I pass knows who I really am. They whisper Rashid as I walk by, point at the trader's son who came back as an American. But this time when I wake up, I don't feel the same crushing guilt. Because I understand now. I didn't choose to be adopted. I didn't choose to be deployed to Afghanistan. I didn't choose any of it. The only choice I had was what to do after I found out. And I chose to live with it. Both parts of it. The American who served his country, the Afghan whose parents sacrificed everything to save him, the complicated, messy truth of being both and neither all at once. It's been 3 years now since I opened that envelope. 3 years since I found out who I really was. Jessica and I had a daughter last year. We named her Lila. After the grandmother she'll never meet, the woman who chose her child's life over her own. When Lila's old enough, I'll tell her the story. About how her grandfather was adopted from Afghanistan. About brave people who made impossible choices. About family that's complicated and blood that runs through borders. I'll tell her she's American, and she's also part of something older, something that connects her to people across the world who share her DNA. And I'll tell her that being both is okay, that identity doesn't have to be simple to be real. The ring stays in my desk drawer now. I take it out sometimes, remember where it came from, who made it, who carried it for decades waiting to pass it on. Someday, I'll give it to Lila. Tell her it came from a great-grandfather she never met, a man who loved his son enough to give him away, who gave everything so that son could become a father himself. And maybe that's the real story. Not about nations or wars or deployments, not about manipulation or recruitment or complex geopolitical operations, but about a chain of love that survived torture and death and decades of separation, about parents who chose their child's life over their own, about an uncle who lost everything trying to bring that child home, about a father, two fathers, who both did what they thought was right. I learned that some truths don't set you free. They just give you something new to carry. But I also learned that some weights are worth carrying, that knowing where you come from, even when it's painful, is better than living a comfortable lie. I'm Ryan Matthews, born Rashid Ahmadi, American Marine veteran, father, husband, Afghan by blood, American by life and choice. I spent 3 tours fighting in Afghanistan. Then I found out I was born there. And I'm still figuring out what that means. But I'm here. I'm alive. I have a family I chose and a family I was born into, and somehow, impossibly, that's enough. Some questions don't have answers. Some stories don't have clean endings. This is one of them. But I'm okay with that now.